Guys of Reddit. What is your worst meeting the dad moment when dating someone new? Had a massive poop on hold. We didn't know he was home. So we got in and I dashed to the toilet. 10 minutes later I had destroyed and quarantined the bathroom. When I went out he sees me and comes to greet. I tried to close the door to lock the odor in but I failed. The smell was really bad. I saw his right eye tear up a little. You asserted your dominance by leaving a sign of your passing. When you're meeting the dad for the first time, but the dog comes up to you and is super friendly because he already knows you. Awkward. My girlfriend's stepdad was at work. So we were in her room watching TV on her bed. We weren't hugging, just holding hands sitting next to each other because of the way the bed is sat. I hear him arrive home downstairs. And about 10 minutes later when I least expected it, a man who's a little shorter than me but a lot more bulked out slams open the door with his arm already extended like a King Cyberman from an old Doctor Who episode, shouting, "Hello Laflux. How are you?" I thought it was some act done to intimidate me and it real did make me nervous. After a few months of knowing the guy I know it was out of nervousness. It's not as bad as others here. But the sudden abruptedness made me almost shitty myself. The first time I was at my now ex GF's place. We each took a piece of fruit when she showed me around. When I finished my banana, I went to throw it away downstairs. Their garbage can was below the sink. So I bent down. And it made quite some noise when I opened it. From the other side of the room comes an angry "Hey hey. What do you think you're doing there?" As I stand up again I look into an angry dad and stumble up. Just throwing away my banana. Then he starts laughing. "Oh. Haha. I thought it was the dog going through the trash. I couldn't see you." They made fun of that for a long time. Just now realizing that every girl I've ever dated hasn't had a dad. WTF. I would like you to meet my dad. Shows me an urn. And on the urn is an engraving. "If you touch my daughter you'll be joining me in here." I had a Filipino GF in college. Decided to meet the parents. I drove around 3 hours to meet them. And even brought flowers and stuff. When for the first time in their life, they decide to practice a tradition of rejecting the BF 3 times before accepting him. The point is that if you really want their daughter, you'll try as many times as it takes. And since they had never done it before, my GF didn't think about warning me. I was pretty damn annoyed when they tossed my flowers right into the garbage. As a Filipino, this rule is King stupid. He insisted he play me in chess. I lost. Was invited over to watch Pride and Prejudice with a girl I liked. Why that movie? We were about 19. She stayed with her dad. Met dad and he did typical dad things. Fast forward a few hours and we are in the dark living room on the couch watching the movie. Her legs were on my lap and I was rubbing them when I see a glint to my left by the hallway. Her dad is standing in his boxers holding a big kitchen knife. "Everything alright in there, Jen?" "Yeah dad." She didn't even see him and never believed me when I told her what happened. Sitting on the couch with my Jewish now ex-wife's dad the first night I met the parents when I heard her mother from the kitchen. Not only is he Catholic, he's Irish. Those are the worst kind. That was fairly awkward. Edit. I'm getting a little hate in my inbox re. Uncle Pepe. So just to clarify, my name came before the meme. My mom is one of those people who will correct your grammar and pronunciation on things. Retired English teacher. So one day I made reference to the actor Ralph Fiennes. And I pronounced it like Runaway Rafe. Mom jumped all over it. "It's pronounced Rafe." "Well it's spelled Rafe." "Well it's pronounced Rafe." "Well it's the King English language." "Ma. You can't just make up shit." "Well it's his name. He can pronounce it any way he wants." "Fine. From now on, my name is Mike. Spelled M-I-K-E. But it's pronounced King Pepe." My sisters lost it and I have been Uncle Pepe to my nephews and niece ever since. While in high school, a girl and were making full use of the living room since her parents were gone for the day. At one point we're just kinda laying naked on the couch between rounds and we hear the door open, so we throw a big ass blanket over ourselves. In walks her dad, who greeted us. He had heard of me but hadn't met me, and proceeded to watch the movie we had on as background noise with us for another hour, all the while we're just naked under a blanket on the other couch. He knew. I'm female. But I have a story that'll fit. Background: my dad is a very blunt man. Sweet as can be and would give you his last penny. But he's got no filter and will not even pretend to like someone if he doesn't. I had dated this guy in my early 20s. Who was a complete dick dash. I was too in love to see it. Or even care, tbh. The first time he met my parents. My mom, the ever sweet southern debutante, was nice to him. My dad, not so much. Mom and ex were talking. And mom notices that dad is leaned back in the chair sleeping. She wakes him up to tell him how rude he's being. My dad said might be rude. But I don't like that boy. Not gonna talk to him. Got nothing to say. Then friggin' went back to sleep. I was mortified. Dad loves my spouse though. Showed up at her house unexpectedly at 11 PM. He was in bed. Once I was let in by her brother. He went and woke dad up to meet me. 2/10 experience. Don't wake a 250-pound Puerto Rican as a first meeting while dating his youngest daughter. The dad was an ex-army ranger. He made me do yard work while the girl stayed inside. He started a fire to burn trimmed tree branches and started the "say you like my daughter" speech. That was fun. Girl's father was in a wheelchair, but was built very well. He obviously lifted as much as he could from his confines. Girlfriend warned me he previously tried to break a guy's hand upon meeting him and shaking his hand. So I went to meet him. He stuck his hand out to shake mine. I didn't hesitate. I shook his hand. He looked at his daughter as if to say, "If you weren't here." I totally snatched his hand off his wrist. Then he started giving me the talk about dating his daughter. He ended it with telling me about his 45 in a shelf. I really wanted to answer with this shelf right next to me. But across the room from you? But I decided against it. Apparently while we were out, her parents ransacked her bedroom and found our notes that we had written back and forth. I wrote words like "sh" and "s." So they forbade her from seeing me again. The shelf right next to me. But across the room from you? Laughed my f-king ass off. Not me. But when my one friend's daughter started seriously dating a man, we decided to have some fun. This is a big Italian family, so we had his brothers-in-law and his father and his best friend and some other friends, most of whom were big guys. We set up the kitchen chairs in a semicircle with one more chair in the center. All of us sat down in the chairs and called in the boyfriend. The father told him to take a seat and then said, cracking his knuckles, "What exactly are your intentions toward my daughter?" Then we couldn't keep straight faces. So we all laughed and had drinks. The dad was a huge guy, probably 6'5" at least, and super ripped. When I first met him he was wearing no shirt and basketball shorts. He introduced himself as the leader of the local Hells Angels chapter and said, "If anyone in town starts anything with you guys, tell them you are with me." He was actually a nice guy most of the time unless he was drunk. I've heard stories before meeting him, so when I seen him it was scary. First time I went to my ex's house, a dog greeted me at the door before anyone else arrived. He then proceeded to hump my leg, and when I would smack him off he would bite my fingers. So when her dad came to answer the door I was just standing there dead-eyed while a little blue heeler humping the FCK out of me. Not me, but my friend's little brother had finally found the love of his life. These two F-king lovebirds were a match made in heaven. I think months had gone on and he ended up over at her parents for dinner. I think they were both in their mid-20s. The story told is that the girl's wild-eyed stocky little uncle grabbed my buddy by the throat and slammed him in the wall about 2 seconds after shaking his hand in a very pronounced effort to discourage him from becoming that guy who broke her little heart. Anyways, I think dinner that night was a tad awkward. This was about 5 years ago maybe? Anyways, the couple is still going strong. And I never heard of any other incidents to follow. That's a quick way to make him into that guy who broke her heart. My high school girlfriend missed a week of school because she had pharyngitis. One day I went over to bring her some stuff from her locker and thought it would be funny to walk in wearing a surgical mask. I stood outside the house tying it around my head when her very tall and stocky father came out and asked me who I was and what I was doing. I told him I was the new BF and thought it would be funny to wear a mask. He wasn't amused and neither was my GF. Jackie, I know you read it. If you're reading this, I still think it was funny. As a teenager I met my GFS at the time's dad and we had same pair of shorts on. Dad shorts. Your daughter calls me daddy too. First family dinner together. Grandma is in US for 75 years but never learned English. Stares at me sternly then rattle off in Italian while pointing a gnarly finger at me. Dad rattle back. What did she say? Dad eating. Without looking up. She likes your shirt. All laugh but me. I was seeing this girl when I happened to be in town and ran into her at a bus stop. We just about had time to say hi to each other before a very old woman tried to get on a bus. Tripped over the step. And fell directly backwards. Landing hard on her head. This girl's mum, who has been an NHS nurse for the last 25 years, then turned out to be there with her as well. She immediately began assessing this woman's injuries and trying to stop the bleeding from her head. A pair of paramedics arrived shortly and took over, not after my ex's mum had tried to shoo them away, informing them that she'd been doing this sort of thing since before they were born. And that's the story of how I first met my ex-girlfriend's very intimidating mother while she was covered in an old lady's blood up to her elbows. First time I met my fiancé registered sinus dad, I drank all his beer and drunkenly called him a homo. How did he know? Please let me give you a tour of the house. First stop. The first time I met my GF's dad, I tried to shake his hand and introduce myself all serious and respectful like. He grabbed my hand and half shook it without even once looking at me. I thought he was the world's biggest dick. 6 years later I'm engaged to his daughter and he and I are pretty damn close. Went to shake his hand and he left me hanging. Then about 4 years later, when telling him his daughter and I were getting married and she was a few months pregnant. We got in late after driving from our university town. Her parents were already asleep but they had kindly prepared the guest room for me. She pointed it out then asked me to join her in her room for the night. The next morning was busy and I don't know where she disappeared to, but both her parents were engineers at the point in their careers where they hire new grads. I was a new engineering graduate. I sat through a 30-minute interview with each of them separately. Could have been worse but I was definitely nervous through it. They didn't mention my lack of use of the guest room but her dad definitely knew. He was cool. But the fact that I was banging his daughter really seemed to bother him. Understandably. You were banging his daughter whilst meeting him? Alpha at FCK. In 2005 I took a train to Connecticut to meet my college girlfriend's family. She picked me up from the train station and when we got to the house, I had to pee really bad. Trip from Philly to Hartford was like 4 hours, so I figured I'd run to the potty before I would meet the family. She told me to use the bathroom upstairs BC, they were renovating the downstairs one. Open the door. There's her dad pooping. This was towards the mother. But I cringe with embarrassment still. I was meeting my friend's parents. And my friend was laying down the rules while walking there. No cursing. No dirty jokes. Okay. I respond. Well. What am I gonna do? Hi. I'm Ninjagenesis 101. Have you heard about the man who jerked off into a spoon? Suddenly. Voice behind us. Oh. That's interesting. Her mother was right behind us. Comma, have you heard about the man who jerked off into a spoon? What's the rest of the joke? I'm about to meet the dad this weekend. Let's hope I have nothing to post come Sunday. Update. Not dead. Meeting dad went really well. Also met mom and GF's twin older brothers. Dad must have liked me because he asked me to help with fixing something on GF's car. And I even got a hug from her mom. My boyfriend was so nervous that he forgot to wear shoes. I have so many questions and don't even know where to start. I was about 20 years old when this happened. The man, 21, I was dating for about 2 months or so was really pushy about having sex. I was just not ready, so I broke up with him. And that is when I met his dad for the first time. When I broke up with him, he wanted to be friends. However, I don't like being friends with the exes. Let alone one that keeps pushing me for sex. His dad got his number from his son and called me, saying I made his son cry and demanded I start dating him again. Or else he is going to have a stern talking to me and the bartender that introduced us. And maybe even going to get the police included. Before I met my wife, I was dating an Aussie woman, since I was working in Australia at the time. We'd shared some info about our past relationships, flings. You know. Normal getting to know each other type stuff. Gauging what sort of life experience the other person has had. As it turns out, my last serious long-term relationship was with a black woman, and for some really messed reason, she ended up telling her father, who works as a long-distance truck driver. Did I mention that she was nuts? So what were his first words upon meeting me? I hear you used to shag a darkie. Yup, I think with that one sentence, I pretty much grasped the attitude of the entire family to a wide variety of social and racial demographics. Walk up to front porch, the dad was sitting on. Dad, how's she going? Me, not too bad. How are you? Dad, I wasn't talking to you. I was the only one there. Then I noticed he was petting a mounted deer head and had a gun out. When my husband met my father, we'd been invited to drink at a bar in my hometown. I knew what my father was planning, so I tried to stick close to hubby most of the night. What I didn't know was that my cousins, all plus 30 years of age, were also there and had been told by my father that I'd brought along my boyfriend. My mother facilitated it by asking him to get her a drink at the bar while I was in the loo. He was swiftly pulled aside and bullied by four of my male family members. They threatened to break his spine and both legs if they saw something they didn't like. Funny thing is, that little interaction didn't scare him in the slightest. What scared him was a year later, at a birthday bash, my little 5'3" aunt, drunk as a skunk, began twiddling his ear piercings and almost pulling them off in the process while she gyrated to the music behind his chair. That scared the shit out of him. Me. Normal white guy, her. Super attractive black chick. After a few weeks of dating, she invited me to her house for dinner. To meet her parents. Her mom and brother were really awesome. Her dad, though, essentially put me in a corner and started going off on me about how I'm some white boy that's only with his daughter so I could put another notch in my belt, and that us white boys only like banging black chicks for bragging rights. Everybody, myself included, thought he was just joking at first. But soon their mouths were hanging open and it was pretty apparent that they were super embarrassed. This went on for about 10 minutes. At the time I was running a gun range. So his family stopped him when he said, I bet you just sit at home waiting for some to break in. Just so you can shoot him. It was all so odd. Completely unprovoked. He was the only arsehole out of an entire family that had been one of the coolest I've met. Our relationship dive bombed after that. I actually was dating a girl for a long time. We had done all sorts of depraved sex acts together. Once I went to visit after not having seen her in some time. Unfortunately, her parents were both hardcore televangelist people. So the mom literally sat us down and explained this is a Christian house and basically said no sex stuff allowed. But horniness is hard to overcome. The GF and I started watching a movie together. And touching a little. And I thought maybe if we're quiet and we make it quick. Then suddenly her dad shouted my name from the hall. I walked out and he proceeded to reiterate this is a Christian household and if we want to do what we want to do, get a hotel. I proceeded to have blue balls for the duration of the visit.